Hello again. Just reading here in 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Controversial verse, but where else would I be reading? Let your women keep silence in the church, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, for they are commanded to be under obedience, as also said the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for women to speak in the church. Very interesting there. How does that apply to us? Why would it be saying that? Is this oppressive to women? No, not at all. You see, it says if they have any questions, they want to argue about theology, they are to approach their husband at home. Why? Because a wife finds, or is supposed to find, her identity in her husband. That is the organic, feminine way of things. That she finds her identity in her husband, not in herself, not in her own presentation, not standing up and not getting behind the pulpit, not arguing theology on Facebook. No, that she goes to her husband, that's her reflex. Okay? Now, talked about she's to be under obedience. Okay? That's not saying obedience to the pastors of the church. It's talking about in submission to her husband. As he said a couple chapters early, chapter 11, he talks about the head of man is Christ and the head of woman is her husband. So the woman, therefore, to be submitted to God requires that she be submitted to her husband. This has nothing to do with abuse. And anyone who brings up abuse in it is simply trying to obfuscate the matter. Okay? This has to do with the sin of Eve, which I've talked about in another video. This has to do with the sin nature in a woman wanting to stand up and be independent and these kind of things, and not find her identity in her husband. Paul in 1 Corinthians is addressing a church that was entirely out of order in many ways. They got so lost in being spiritual and the spiritual gifts that they forgot things that are very natural, like the organic order of what is a man, what is a woman, and how they are to interact together. This is what Paul is trying to fix in the church when he gave this command. That women not stand up as the independent feminist in the church to speak her opinion, but her husband does that. She goes to her husband at home. She has her questions of him, because every man is to be in his house the pastor and resident theologian. Now you might say, well, what if the woman's the stronger one spiritually and the man's just not very theologically inclined and he doesn't really have an interest in that? Well, see, that's a problem too. Equally as bad, if not more so, that the men are not taking responsibility that they have been given. Every man is the leader in his home, whether he's leading good or bad. He cannot escape it. But by not taking the reins of being the resident pastor and theologian in that house, he's failing. And when the woman try to grab the wheel because he's not driving correctly spiritually, and they're trying to take the wheel out of his hands, that's rebellion. And when they're not finding their identity in him, regardless of his failings, it is directly related to 1 Corinthians 11 that talks about if she is submitted to God, then she has to be submitted to her husband, because that's what God commanded. Now, if any of you ladies out there have a problem with this, don't comment on my YouTube. Do what the Bible says. Go talk to your husband about it. maybe he'll make a comment.